The battlefield stretched across the frozen plains of Vicar Prime, a world that had never known the warmth of a yellow sun. The Crexan Empire had held this planet for 300 years. They believed no force in the galaxy could take it from them. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Commander Jace Mercer stood at the front of the human assault force, his breath turning to mist in the bitter cold. Around him, 2,000 soldiers waited in silence. They had traveled across 4 star systems to reach this moment. The Crexan forces numbered over 50,000, their defensive lines stretching from horizon to horizon. Any military tactician would call this attack impossible. But humans had never been good at listening to what was possible. The Crexan soldiers watched from their fortified positions. They stood 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in thick armored scales that could stop most projectile weapons. Their eyes, adapted to the darkness of their homeworld, could see perfectly in the dim light. They had conquered 100 planets and destroyed entire civilizations. They looked at the small human force with something close to amusement. Jace pulled his weapon from its sheath. The blade was 3 feet of specialized alloy, designed to withstand temperatures that would melt ordinary steel. He pressed the activation switch on the handle. Instantly, the sword erupted in flames. Not ordinary fire, but plasma channeled through microscopic vents along the blade's edge. The flames burned at 4,000 degrees, hot enough to cut through starship armor. The Crexan commanders saw the single flame ignite in the darkness. They did not understand what they were looking at. Fire was rare on their frozen worlds. They had encountered it in their conquests, but they had never seen it used as a weapon. Not like this. Jace lifted the burning sword above his head. The light reflected off the snow, turning the white landscape orange and gold. Behind him, his soldiers activated their own weapons. Some carried plasma rifles. Others held thermal grenades. A few, like Jace, carried the flaming swords that had become the symbol of human resistance. The humans had earned a reputation across the galaxy. Other species called them the Firewalkers, creatures who could survive temperatures that would kill most life forms. What the aliens did not understand was that humans came from a world of extremes. They had evolved to adapt, to survive, to push through conditions that seemed impossible. Jace charged forward. His boots crunched through the frozen ground as he ran toward the enemy lines. His soldiers followed without hesitation. There was no battle cry, no shouting. Just the sound of 2,000 humans running toward an army that outnumbered them 25 to 1. The Crexan front line opened fire. Energy beams streaked across the battlefield, striking the frozen ground and turning snow to steam. Human soldiers fell, their bodies crumpling into the ice. But the charge did not slow. For every soldier who fell, 10 more kept running. Jace reached the enemy defenses first. A Crexan soldier swung a massive blade toward his head. Jace ducked under the attack and drove his flaming sword into the alien's chest. The plasma blade cut through the armored scales like they were paper. The Crexan screamed, a sound that echoed across the battlefield. It was a sound their species had never made before, a sound of fear. The human commander pulled his blade free and kept moving. He did not stop to celebrate his kill. He did not pause to catch his breath. He simply kept cutting through everything in his path. His sword left trails of fire in the air, creating patterns that the Crexan soldiers could not follow. Behind him, the human force crashed into the enemy lines like a wave hitting a shore. The Crexans had expected the humans to break against their defenses. Instead, the humans broke through them. Plasma rifles fired at point-blank range, melting holes in alien armor. Thermal grenades exploded, creating patches of impossible heat in the frozen landscape. A Crexan commander watched from the rear of the battlefield. He had fought against a dozen species, and he had never seen anything like this. The humans should have been easy to defeat. They were small, physically weak, and their bodies could not survive the cold for long. But they kept fighting. They kept pushing forward. They seemed completely unafraid of death. Jace cut down another enemy soldier. The flames from his sword had spread to the Crexen's body, setting the alien ablaze. The sight caused nearby enemies to hesitate. Fire was something primal, something that triggered ancient fears in most species. The Crexens had never faced an enemy that brought fire to the battlefield. The human commander's armor was covered in alien blood. His muscles burned from exhaustion. He had been fighting for 20 minutes without pause, cutting through enemy after enemy. Any other species would have collapsed by now. But humans had something that other species lacked. They called it endurance. The ability to keep going long after the body wanted to stop. A group of Crexen elite soldiers surrounded him. These were the best warriors their empire had produced. Each one had killed dozens of enemies in single combat. They moved to attack from all sides, their weapons raised for the killing blow. Jace spun in a circle, his flaming sword creating a ring of fire around him. Two of the elite soldiers were caught by the blade and fell screaming. The others jumped back, suddenly uncertain. They had never seen a being move so fast while carrying such a large weapon. The human commander did not give them time to recover. He attacked the nearest elite, driving his blade through the alien's weapon arm. The Crexen dropped his weapon and stumbled backward. Jace followed with a second strike that ended the fight permanently. The remaining elite soldiers exchanged looks. In their language, they communicated without words. They had decided to retreat, to fall back and regroup. But Jace did not let them. He chased them down one by one, his flaming sword cutting through their defenses like they were training dummies. Across the battlefield, the human forces were pushing deeper into enemy territory. The Crexen defensive lines were collapsing. Soldiers who had never known defeat were running from creatures half their size. The commanders screamed orders, demanding that their troops hold position, but the orders went unheard. The Crexen army was experiencing something new. They were experiencing fear. Jace reached the center of the enemy formation. Here stood the command structure, a massive fortified building that controlled all Crexen operations on the planet. Taking this building would end the battle. Taking this building would end the war. 100 enemy soldiers stood between him and the entrance. They were the personal guard of the Crexen High Commander, warriors who had sworn to die before allowing their master to fall. They formed a wall of scaled bodies and sharp weapons, ready to stop the human advance. Jace did not slow down. He charged directly at the center of the formation. His flaming sword cut through the first defender and the second. The wall of soldiers closed around him, weapons striking from every direction. One blade cut his arm. Another sliced across his back. But he kept fighting. The human soldiers behind him saw their commander surrounded. They pushed forward with renewed strength, crashing into the enemy guard from all sides. The fighting became chaotic, a swirling mass of bodies and weapons and fire. Jace took another wound, a deep cut across his chest. He felt his strength beginning to fade. His vision blurred at the edges, but he was so close now. The entrance to the command building was just 20 feet away. He pushed through the last line of defenders, his sword cutting a path through the chaos. A Crexen guard grabbed his wounded arm, trying to drag him down. Jace drove his elbow into the alien's face and kept moving. Another guard appeared in front of him. Jace cut him down without breaking stride. The doors of the command building stood before him. They were made of reinforced metal, designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Jace pressed his flaming sword against the surface. The plasma blade cut through the metal slowly, leaving a glowing line of melted alloy. He carved a rough circle and kicked it inward. Inside the command building, the Crexen High Commander waited. He was massive, even by his species standards. His scales were darker than the others, a sign of age and power. He held a weapon that had killed 1,000 enemies, a blade forged from the core of a dying star. The alien commander looked at the wounded human standing in his doorway. He saw a creature covered in blood, barely able to stand. He saw a being who should have died 100 times on the battlefield. And for the first time in his long life, he understood why the galaxy had started to fear these creatures. Jace raised his flaming sword. The blade flickered slightly, its power cells nearly exhausted. He knew he had one more fight left in him. Just one more. The High Commander attacked first. His star-forged blade swung in an arc that should have cut the human in half. But Jace was already moving. He ducked under the strike and drove his sword upward. The flaming blade pierced the alien commander's chest, finding the gap between his scales. The Crexan fell to his knees. His weapon dropped from his claws. He looked at the humans standing over him and tried to understand how this had happened. His empire had conquered the galaxy. His armies had never known defeat. And now he was dying at the hands of a creature he had dismissed as insignificant. Jace pulled his sword free and let the alien commander fall. Outside the building, the sounds of battle were fading. The Crexan forces were surrendering in massive numbers. Without their leader, without their command structure, they had lost the will to fight. The human commander walked out of the building and looked across the battlefield. His soldiers had formed defensive positions, accepting the surrender of enemy troops. The frozen ground was covered with bodies from both sides. The cost of victory had been high, but they had won. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The Crexan Empire, which had dominated known space for centuries, had been defeated by a human force that should have been destroyed in the first minute of fighting. Other species began to reconsider their opinions of humanity. These strange creatures from a small blue planet were not to be underestimated. Jay sat down on a piece of debris and looked at his damaged sword. The flames had finally died, the power cells completely drained. He would need to get it repaired before the next battle, because there would always be another battle. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was just getting started. A medic approached him and began treating his wounds. Jace barely noticed. He was thinking about the soldiers who had followed him into impossible odds. He was thinking about the ones who had not survived. He was thinking about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had never seen anything quite like them. The Fire Knight had charged through enemy lines. His flaming sword had cut through all who stood against him. And the galaxy would never forget what they had witnessed on the frozen plains of Vega Prime.